Hi guys. So just a short video about clinical notes and some information that may be helpful to some of you. So kind of first thing for insurance-based practices, there are very specific things that the insurances will want to see in your notes. In general, each one kind of has their own unique things that you'll learn throughout the time, but in general, they want to know the date that the appointment happened. They want to know the time that it started and ended, and make sure that it's like the true times, not like 11 to 12. Make sure it's like 11:03 to whatever time it ended. It's also going to need a signature, so your EHR will likely do this for you. Definitely going to need a diagnosis code and how did you come to that diagnosis and proving medical necessity for treatment. It's going to need your treatment plan with a specific timeline and progress updates of your client's progress. Some of the difference between like what is inside your client's medical record. So there's kind of psychotherapy notes and then there's progress notes. So what a progress note is kind of what we just went over: the date, the time, goals of treatment, and what was worked on in session. Psychotherapy notes are notes that are kind of like for yourself on what to follow up on in the next sessions or different things like that. And these psychotherapy notes don't typically go in the client's folder. The thing is if you're keeping two different files for every client, you're keeping like, okay, all the progress notes and this is the client's file. And then keeping psychotherapy notes for yourself to kind of keep tabs on different things throughout sessions. If you were ever to get subpoenaed for those records, you cannot just hand over your progress notes and say, this is all the notes that I have, because that's not true. You have the psychotherapy notes too if you're keeping two files for your client. And so you also have to give over those psychotherapy notes too. So it is always advised to just keep one medical record, one file per client, and kind of house all your documentation in there because, you have to disclose that information if you are subpoenaed. So if you do take psychotherapy notes in session, like I take psychotherapy notes in session. So if the client is kind of talking, I can look down at my notes, refer back to those, and possibly bring up something again 10 minutes later. And what I do with those notes at the end of every session is I don't put them in their file. I don't add them to the EHR. The EHR is the only file I keep for the client, and every other note that I take is just shredded if it's not kind of entered into the EHR for their progress notes. Also knowing you can never withhold medical records if your client has a financial balance. So if your client has a financial balance and they want their medical records, you can't say like, well, I'm not going to give you your medical records until you pay your balance down. You just can't do that. But you can have a policy if it's in your informed consent that additional copies of the medical records could cost $1 per page or something like that. And also making sure in your informed consent that you're dictating like how long it'll take you to get their medical records to them or to that person once it is requested. But kind of back to clinical notes, lots of different ways that you can keep clinical notes. Most people are going to have an EHR. You can make a template in there. You can, kind of go in there and build out your notes template and make it all check boxes. I know on the Louisville networking page, someone had posted something last week about kind of a template for notes that may be really helpful to build your template off of. Again, making sure you're hitting all the things that insurance wants if that's something that your practice needs to abide by, but also making sure the note works for you and that it's pretty easy to be able to complete, because notes is something that we can usually get behind on and don't always want to get behind on those. Also, I've heard of people that take paper notes in session and then just scan in that paper note into their EHR and that is the client's note, if you do like to kind of take paper notes. I guess for treatment plans, a little bit different than the progress notes per session, but making sure that these treatment plans are looked at as fluid documents and that they should change throughout the client's treatment. Of course, agencies or larger corporations are going to have longer and more detailed treatment plans, but dependent on your practice and the structure, you may have a little bit more freedom to do what you want with these. Of course, with insurances, you're going to want to check with the insurance provider and get clear expectations of what they will need to see in your treatment plans and in your notes, and how often those treatment plans need to be updated. Most will want to see like very clear client symptoms and how they are being addressed throughout those sessions in the time frame that treatment is being provided. If you are private pay, aren't dealing with any third-party payers, you don't technically have to have a formal treatment plan, but it is very good practice to have one. And you should kind of have progress notes, of course, for your sessions, outlining the objective for treatment, action steps that you're taking, support that is going on, successes, and continued struggles that are going on for the client. Lots of different, again, fashions that you can use to write those notes. I will go briefly into like what a DAP note is and what a SOAP note is and things like that. A lot of us have kind of developed throughout time ways that work for us, possibly kind of morphing some of these more scripted type progress ways, or ways of documenting progress notes. But some questions to ask yourself in regard to every client: you want to make sure that you have a note documenting that you obtained informed consent for treatment. You want to have a note for every date of service provided, and you want to have a note explaining any gaps in treatment as well. You also want to provide a clear reason for initially entering into treatment in those notes, and provide a clear story of the client's progress over time throughout those notes. In every note, you also want to verify that you describe the actions and the interventions that you used during the session. You want to describe your client's response clearly. Maybe that's via quotes or observations or assessments that you did. And then you also want to follow up on plans identified in the previous note. So if you said in the previous note, going to check in on X, Y, and Z, make sure in the following notes and so forth that you checked in on those things. There is a free paperwork crash course by Melissa Hall. I'll link that in the comments. It's kind of simple, but it's kind of a good refresher and nice to review. But kind of what a specific DAP note, DAP note is, it's a simplified progress note for counselors that are a little bit more process-oriented. So you're going to focus on the data, the assessment, and then the plan. So what happened in the session, like what you physically saw in the session, the counselor interpretation of how the session relates to the larger counseling goal, and then what happened next, kind of homework you provided or anything like that. Another kind of common note template is a GIRP, G-I-R-P note. This is useful for very structured settings like CBT, solution-focused therapy, coaching, any type of short-term therapy. So you have the goal, intervention, response, and plan. And then another one, SOAP notes, very popular in the medical community for process-oriented therapies because the note focuses more on the client's response during the session. So you have the subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. So subjective is things that happen throughout the session that were interpreted. So if you interpret that the client's anger reaction to something you said didn't have anything to do with what was said, but possibly a reminder of something from their past, etc. Objective is like things that went on in the session, crying, yelling, quotes said by the client, body positioning that was going on. Assessment, clinical interpretation of the subjective and objective data, and then plan, what's going to happen next. And then a kind of last common note template is a PAIP note, P-A-I-P note. This could work well for individuals who provide like very specific interventions. So it's problem, assessment, intervention, plan. And if you are having trouble formulating your notes, there is some helpful prompts to kind of use and assist in kind of transposing or trying to make that template that you're going to use for every client, these are some really good things to think about when creating that template. So we want to make sure that reflecting. So again, why did my client enter treatment in the first place? Why do they continue to come to their sessions? What is their priority for today's session? Then result. What was the original goal for my client? What is my client's current goal, and how does that relate or differ from their original goal? And then in today's session, like, how did we work towards that goal? Motivation sometimes. So how and why is my client motivated for change? What is getting in the way or assisting with their motivation? Is the session today, kind of in your session today, how did we work together on their motivation levels? Strengths, of course, is a good one to add in there. What are some positive qualities that the client has brought into session today? What is getting in the way of not allowing the client to display these positive qualities? And how can my client implement these qualities into their day-to-day life? Then skills. What did my client come in today wanting to focus on? Did my client seem to have a very strong sense of focus today? Will my client be able to leave here today and implement some of the skills that we discussed? And then relations. So was there any therapeutic ruptures throughout the session? Is there collaboration or harmony between the client and the counselor? And what are some ways that the therapeutic relationship is progressing? So all of this information is located on the OneDrive in the clinical resources. I'll also link in the comments some helpful things for those notes, but really just remember these notes are, for your clients if they read them through their medical records. They're for insurances to get reimbursed, and they're for you to keep track of your client's treatment plan and progress throughout sessions. And it can be really helpful to, throughout your client's treatment, to go back and look at different progress notes during that termination session or whatever it may be. So notes are really important. They're not, sometimes they can be a daunting task and be very annoying to do and not know why we're writing them. But they're very important. We've got to have documentation that we are seeing the client and what we're doing with the client. But sometimes they can be a huge weight on our shoulders and we don't do our notes, and then we have 50 notes to do and it becomes overwhelming and then it becomes formulaic. So there are ways to kind of help you tackle this. Personally, I see a client, I do the note, I see a client, I do the note, or I see clients all day and then I finish those notes for the day. I do realize during times where I let them pile up for the week, I kind of forget maybe what we talked about if I didn't take good notes. I get stressed out. I feel like I just want to write the same thing for every note. And I know that that's not the best for me and that's not the best for my clients. So being able to find a system that works for you, a lot of times on the EHRs, they will make it templated. You can set your own templates to make it as easy for you as possible. I know for me, I have a template that I use, and then when I go in to do my notes for the clients, I say load previous notes, and then I go through and delete the information and then update it all with the current information. I know there's an easier way to do it. I could just have a template and I could go through and click and write and type, but for some reason that just works better for me in the way my brain is working right now, and who knows in the future if it'll change given whatever circumstances are going on. But yeah, any questions about notes or anything like that, let me know. Of course, here to assist in any way I can, but okay, bye.